welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everybody. This is Evelyn Hershkowitz, Reader Services Librarian from Turn the Page podcast. And today we're lucky to have with us author Becky Chalsen. And Becky has written, this is her second book. Kismet was her debut novel. She's a writer and film TV development executive. She's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and now lives in New York City. Becky is a quadruplet and married to her high school sweetheart and identical twin, whose family has spent summers on Fire Island for more than 3 decades. And as I said, her debut novel was Kismet, and Serendipity is her second novel. So thank you so much for joining us, Becky.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So I really enjoyed the book. It's a great summer read, especially because it takes place on Fire Island. Yes. And for those of us living here on Long Island, it has so much local things in it because East Meadow is just a hop, skip, and a jump away. Actually, I went to Stu Leonard's yesterday, which is in East Meadow. Yes. So I go to that area all the time. Most of the characters in the book are from East Meadow.
Yes,
so
yes.
Would you like to tell everybody what this book is about?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And thank you for reading and for the kind words. Serendipity is about a group of friends who rent a share house in Fire Island for the summer. They rent a share house called the Serendipity House for 3 weekends. And the characters are from East Meadow in Long Island, and which I love. They're childhood friends. They went to high school together. And I wanted them to be from a town close enough to Fire Island that they could do day trips out there, and that the whole community of Ocean Beach, the whole setting could sort of be a character in and of itself and something that was familiar in the best way. I love using sense of place as a character. In my debut novel, Kismet, that's in the town Kismet in Fire Island. So I knew I wanted to write another beachy book in a different town in Fire Island. But I love the idea of these places that you go back to many times in life, and the places that you go to as a kid, and then again as a teenager, and then in your mid-20s. And in Kismet, it's their 30th birthday, and in Serendipity, it's in their mid-20s. And the way that the places can feel familiar or different or remind you of your youth and have that sort of nostalgic quality. And so I really wanted the place to be something that was special to their memory. And so this group of friends hasn't been all out in Fire Island together since their after prom weekend. And so they've changed. One friend, Maggie, who's our main character, had moved to LA. She's been in Los Angeles for 6 years. And now she's just back in New York after a career setback. She wanted to become a filmmaker and ran into some difficulties out there. And so she's back home and trying to find her way back into the friend group of her youth and see if they can kind of make space again for her in that circle. And so, drama ensues, but it's beachy and fun at the same time, and hopefully a nice escape for a summer weekend.
I'm not that familiar with Fire Island. Are all the places real that you talked about? You didn't make up bars or restaurants. They're all legit. They're all really there.
They're all real. Sandbar's our favorite. So the structure is inspired by a real trip that my friends and I did do. When we were in our mid-20s, we rented a share house in Ocean Beach for 3 weekends of the summer. So like 1 weekend in June, 1 weekend in July, and the third weekend in August, which is exactly the structure of the book. And I started writing the book probably 3 or so years after we did that summer trip, maybe 2 or 3 years. And when reflecting back, I was like, oh my gosh, we did a perfect 3-act structure on this trip inadvertently, like to be able to structure by the month. And it was fun when I was there with my friends too, because you come back to Fire Island with different moments that happened off island. Like I remember coming back in the July trip with a new job, and in August I had a knee injury, and there's all of these, which is sort of in the book too, and all of these ways that you can kind of catch up. And so it was a fun puzzle for how to create all of the drama to be happening on Fire Island, and then have snippets of what they were doing back in New York City where they all live. But I also just sort of loved that idea of being 25 and having 3 full weekends of the summer where you had nothing to do but hang out with your friends. I feel like once I turned 27, that became impossible. Like every weekend is weddings or bachelorette bridal showers or work trips or, just family obligations. And then soon that turns into like first birthday parties and on all of the amazing, like beautiful things that we get to experience by growing up with friends. And aging is such a privilege and it's such a gift. But I also find myself nostalgic for that summer where we had genuinely nothing else to do but hang out with our friends. And so I wanted to kind of write a love letter to that very specific moment of time where it's sort of in between chapters and you can be so grateful and reflective of that moment. And so yeah, and Ocean Beach is just the best setting because it is real world. So many restaurants, so many fun bars. Sandbar is covered with like flip-flops on the ceiling, and everywhere you walk, there's bands and pizza and music. It just feels like an oasis. And so I wanted to capture that feeling of just when you get to Fire Island and you take the ferry and you take your watch off and time sort of doesn't exist while you're out there until it's time to go back home on Sunday evening. And so I thought it was the perfect backdrop for summer escape.
It is, absolutely. Are any of the characters based on real people?
No, they aren't. And so it's fun because all of their names are, and I was just talking to another author friend of mine about this. Like I name everybody after people in my real life. And so Maggie and Liz are our main best friends in Serendipity, and they are two of my sisters. So I'm a quadruplet, as my bio reads, and we're all four girls. And my sisters are Joanna, Maggie, and Lizzie. And so in Kismet, my main characters are Joe for my sister Joanna, and then Amy, because that's what my name, I joke, should have been, because we are inadvertently 3/4 of the Little Women names,
Right.
Meg and then Amy. But my parents didn't realize that they were doing that until 2 months after we were named. And they
Oh my
realized
gosh, that's so
they
funny.
changed me to be Amy, and I'm Rebecca for Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. So still like a literary ode. So I wanted to make in Kismet, I gave Amy as like what I should have been, and then
Right.
Joe. But I knew I had to write a second book so I could give my other sisters characters named after them. We're very fair. I think raising quadruplets is like all about fairness and making sure everybody feels attention and taken care of, and that they like know what their role is. And so I had to write a book for Maggie and Liz. And then the rest are just friends, or I always name restaurants after things. Like I sort of fill the book with inside jokes for myself to keep it fun as I'm writing. But I have some friends who can't write at all. Like they can't write the characters' names at all. If they know anyone remotely with the name like Zoe, they can't name anyone Zoe. And so my characters aren't pulled from life, but the names, the places, the details, like where they grew up, the town of East Meadow. My good family friends live in East Meadow, so they gave me all of the research and the names of their teachers. And so it makes it fun. I can name a character a name in real life, but then the character themselves is so different from who the person I named them after. But sometimes when my family is reading, they have to kind of remember, like, okay, it's not me, it's not my sister, it's not Maggie. It's like, no, it's just a character I made up. I just love the
Right.
names.
Well, there's identical twin boys.
Yes. And so my husband is an identical twin boy.
Mhm.
And my husband likes to joke that he is all of the men in all the books I write. Like he is every good character of every guy I write, which is true. There romance, there's definitely like at the high school sweetheart. I married my high school sweetheart, and I talk about that a lot in my books just because I think it's beautiful, but also, write what you know. And so it's funny. There's really elements of me more than anything in all of the characters, and things that I think about or I'm excited by or I'm terrified by. I throw into all of the writing. But yeah, the twin boys, the names for the twin boys are they're Mac and Cam,
Right.
which funnily enough are my coworkers' husbands' dogs growing up were Mac and Cam.
Oh gosh.
That years ago, and I wrote it down because I've always loved palindromes and anagrams and like things with letters. My whole notes app is just a series of things that I'm tickled by. And so I wrote that down. And when I was thinking of twin boys, I was like, "Ah, it has to be Mac and Cam." And I love the idea of a mom naming their twin sons like mirrors of each other. And my
Right.
husband and his twin are mirror twins. They're not 100% identical, but like in a mirror. And so I wanted to explore that way. But yes, and Kismet has twin sisters. One day I will write my quadruplet book. It's just so many characters. I think my next one, if I can
I think
pull
that
it
would
off.
be great.
Yeah,
I would
that's the
love that.
goal. Yeah.
So last Sunday in Newsday,
Oh, yes.
there was a lovely article, Long Island Hotspots, a novel idea. And the three books that were featured was yours,
Yeah.
Serendipity, and All the Summers in Between by Brooke Lee Foster, who I interviewed a few weeks ago.
Oh,
And
amazing.
then the third book, The Perfect Sister, which doesn't come out till July. So this was wonderful. What an absolutely great
Amazing.
article. So
I
if anybody's
cried.
interested, it's Newsday. It was in the fanfare section on Sunday, June 23rd.
It's so beautiful. And we were getting texts. My good family friend's grandma texted that she saw it and she cut it out to give us a copy. And then
Right.
another friend had texted that she'd seen it come in and her husband walked it in and she ran out of the pool to like go and send a photo. And
Yeah.
it's just such a sweet, it's the local community of in Long Island and in and around Bayshore, especially too. Like I visited with at the Silent Book Club of Bayshore, and everybody is so sweet and supportive. And I feel like that's just exactly that Fire Island community energy too. Like whenever I'm on the ferry and talking to people about books, it's just the Fire Island community is so warm and welcoming and it has so just like a good-hearted spirit to it that's been a real treat.
As soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
It was
I'm
amazing.
interviewing 2 out of the 3 authors on here. I was like, wow, this is great. It's fabulous. It
Yeah.
says Ocean Beach was the obvious choice, and she modeled the beach house after the Bamboo House, a summer rental in the town that she shared with a group of friends in 2018. But you did put the Bamboo House in there
Yes.
also. That was the house where Ty was living.
Exactly. I wanted the Bamboo House featured, and because especially too like that summer that we rented in Ocean Beach, we rented at the Bamboo House, but we had our family friends from East Meadow were renting with their high school friends, and we all went over for one night. I wanted to just capture that feeling of being in a share house in Ocean Beach where the whole town feels like everyone's like 23 and 24 and just wanting to meet new friends and go out and sort of like live a young summer vibe. And so I knew I needed another house and I wanted the friends to kind of intermingle. And so I knew it had to be the Bamboo House because we love the Bamboo House.
Did you live out in California at all?
I did, yes. I
Okay.
did 2 years in LA. I graduated college and moved straight to LA. I
Oh,
worked at WME, which is a talent agency, in the book to film agenting department. And so we sold the film rights for novels to directors and studios and production companies. And I was really enjoying it. But it was ultimately just too far from my family. And that's sort of what I realized. Like I had my quote unquote dream job, but without my like dream community, it sort of didn't matter. I realized I had to discover for myself. And so I made the decision to move back home, which on paper probably seemed so easy because my quadrupled sisters were in New York and my high school sweetheart, like we had been doing long distance and my parents were still in the city. But it was hard because I had made this big statement that I was moving to LA, wanted to work in film, and I had all of these things. I said I wouldn't let myself move back home until I, got to go to an awards show, even like as an assistant on the carpet, or like got to go to a screening, or I met XYZ, or was promoted, or wasn't an assistant anymore. And then in actually doing it, we realized like the way to be the happiest in life is sort of a little bit of everything. And I just realized I would never be my happiest self without my community and the family that I had built in New York. And so I moved back home. And that was the summer that we did our rental in Ocean Beach. And I found my way back into my friend group from high school and with my sisters and all of those people. And I had to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I was lucky I was able to just transfer to the New York WME office for a
oh,
bit, worked in the publishing department there, which is how I met my book agent. We were co-assistants together. We had met as interns and then worked as co-assistants. But then I got really lucky in that a production company job opened up in New York. And so I was able to move over to this production company where that's been my day job for the past 6 years in like book to film development. And so I was able to do that. And then in COVID, I started writing Kismet. And then by the time I sold Kismet in July 2021, I had just sold my debut novel, which I never had any thought I would ever write a book. It was such a crazy dream come true. And the month before that, the movie that my boss had directed had come out in theaters, and I had my name in the credits for the first time ever. And I
what
had
movie was that?
it's a quiet place too.
Oh, okay.
I work for John Krasinski. And so
That's
it's been
cool.
it's so much fun. And it's been such a great opportunity. I've learned so much. And I remember in that moment, just reflecting on all of these two very big dream come trues, like life accomplishments that I never would have thought were in my future when I moved back to New York. I sort of was like, well, that means I'll never work in film again. Like I'll probably just get any job that I can get in New York. And then the last 5 years have unfolded in like truly beyond my wildest dreams I didn't even know to dream. I didn't know I'd ever write a book, and I didn't think that there would be a film job in New York because the industry is so much smaller out here. And
Right.
so I wanted to talk about that in Serendipity. I started writing Serendipity pretty much right after we had sold Kismet. So like by August 2021, I was diving into it. And so it was those themes in mind, like that idea that sometimes you have to give up a certain dream or a certain shape of a dream to then relearn it and redraw it in a community that will actually let you thrive. And I've talked to a lot of people who have been sort of in that same boat, whether it's in any profession. Like I picked Hollywood because that's what I knew from my own experience, but it's also something that's so large in our culture that it's sort of easy for everyone to understand, and it feels sort of glitzy and big. But I had friends at the same time who had gone to law school and had spent a year working in law only to realize they didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. And how do you deal with that feeling of, oh, this thing I told myself I wanted to do or assumed I'd be good at or thought I wanted to do at age 18, and now at age 24, 25, 26, it doesn't feel like the way I thought it would or the way I thought it should. And that permission that you can grow out of something and change your mind, which I think is so freeing, but really scary. And so I knew I wanted to write about that. So I wanted to have Maggie giving up and meeting Maggie at this moment where she's been in LA and it's just not working. Like it's not clicking. She has so much passion for it, but she fell into a wrong path, which also happens to a lot of my friends in LA who just sometimes it's just one bad boss and you quit the industry completely. There's so many bad eggs in a lot of industries and a lot of different jobs, but especially in the film business. And I was really lucky that I didn't experience any type of workplace harassment like that at all. But I saw it and heard about it. And just that idea that one wrong landing can sort of make you quit the dream completely. And so I wanted to talk about Maggie being able to move away and find a new place that she could feel creative and inspired and supportive and have this community that she didn't have in LA, that she can find it back in New York. I always think about the vessel of a book as I start writing too. And so I had that idea of the 3 weekends, that 3-act structure from my own vacation with my friends, and then married it with those themes of growing up and, quarter life career anxiety and quarter life crises. And then I basically just structure the book as if I was going to spend 3 weekends with my friends. Like there's sandcastle competition and they go out to the bars, there's barbecue. And then I build my characters around the anchor of place and time and structure.
It was fun. It really is. It was a really good book. One thing I want to bring up is as I was reading it, I was taking notes, and one of the things you mentioned Hank Lane Band.
Yes,
And my niece just got married and she had Hank Lane. And I
love.
was like, oh my gosh, there's so many things in here that are so local. It's such a perfect Long Island book.
So fun. No, I love to have specific nods as much as I can. Like in Kismet, I featured the Rich Mahogany Band. Whenever they come and play in Fire Island, it's like the best night. It's so fun. But I wanted to have all specific restaurants, make it feel really rooted and like anchored in Long Island and Ocean Beach. And it's a fun opportunity just to give shout out to all places. Maybe this is a bad story, but so my character Liz is Maggie's ex-best friend who she's had sort of abandoned, and they're sort of dealing with that messy mid-20s friendship reality. Like how can you kind of grow with your friendship at the same time? And Liz is getting married. And so a lot of her plot line is about her engagement to her high school sweetheart and figuring out what she wants to do and mourning the loss of her mom. And so she's wedding dress shopping in this chapter. And originally I had set it with this salon called RK Bridal, which is where I got my wedding dress. And so I was like, oh, great. And I had a lovely experience with them. But then my best friend from high school used RK and had the worst experience with them. And like, they were really disrespectful to her and ruined her alterations. And like, they were just so cruel to her. And so we were like, we have to take them out of the book, and like no free press for them. Although I'm talking about them now, but we put in a different salon. Like I think I wrote Beholden, or like a salon where one of my other sisters got their wedding dress from. But I take it very seriously for no reason, just because
Yeah, no,
it's fun to do.
It's great having so you really didn't need to do any research.
Yeah, no, my research was going out to the bars in Ocean Beach and like eating the pizza. Like,
Do you go out there often?
yeah, we love to go out there. We're always in Kismet most. That's where my in-laws' house is, but we'll go to Ocean Beach at least a few times a summer, and especially when I knew I was writing a book set in Ocean Beach. And it's fun, both of my books are set in places that are very familiar to me, which is helpful. But I would love to write something that is not necessarily historical fiction, but maybe something that takes a bit more of that research. It's just my tip for writers always too is understanding the parameters with which you can write, like keeping it fun for yourself and not being so hard on yourself. And so for me, I work during the week, Monday to Friday from like 9 to 7. And so I can only write on Saturdays because I can't wake up any earlier than I already do. Like I just cannot a morning person. And by the nighttime, my brain is sort of shot and I do a lot of reading for work and engaging with story and material and development. And by the time I get home, I can't do my own books. And so I only write on Saturdays. And so I really rely on outlines and structures because I need to know what I'm working on. Because if I spent my whole Saturday sort of dreaming, opening a Word doc and hoping like inspiration strikes, then I would get nothing done. And so I spend a lot of time in the beginning with that kind of brainstorm, walking around, thinking on the subway, using my notes app. But once I get into drafting, I always have a clear sense of plan. And there's always room for discovery, like little tiny beats and fun character moments and scene moments. But I sort of always know the big overarching structure, where this is going, what are the major beats and set pieces. And then I move in from there. But that's, it's just the reality of when and how I can write. And for me, writing is so much fun. It's so enjoyable that I would rather keep myself entertained, have fun by setting in places that I love and know so well. So then each Saturday I can kind of dip back. And so my first project I started writing in like May 2020 was like a thriller because I come from film industry and thrillers are, evergreen and everyone wants a Gone Girl always.
Right.
And so I had this like moody thriller. And then after like maybe 3 weeks of it, I was like, this is not for me. Like I was so depressed. It was already like pandemic and I was working during the week. And then on Saturdays, I would open my Word doc and be in this culty, like it was so dark and heavy. And I was like, no, this is not going to work for me right now. And then in June 2020, we went out to Fire Island for the first time of that like pandemic summer. And on the ferry to Kismet, the first page of my novel, Kismet, sort of just popped into my head. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like it's a beach read. And so I paused and sort of thought about writing what the book would be. And I wanted to write about a wedding and twin sisters. And so I sort of structured Kismet from there. And then it was just became a joy because at work we do a bit more, action, sci-fi, horror. And then on Saturdays, I can go to the beach in my head and it keeps it very joyful. And that's to me, like the trick of being able to actually write, which is the hardest part, is just getting the words down and sitting in that discipline of writing and figuring out the genre that I could be the most joyful for was sort of the key that unlocked the whole creative process.
So if you only write on Saturdays, how long does it take you to write a book?
So Kismet sort of fell out of me in the most beautiful way. Like it was 6 months of Saturdays and I had my first draft. And then I sent it to my agent who, because we had worked together at WME, she was the first one that ever told me to write a book just because she loved my emails. Because I like love a good, flowery, beautiful email. And so I listened to her, I wrote my book, we did a few rounds together, and then we sold it that following July 2021. Serendipity took a bit longer. I think that probably took me about a year of Saturdays, just because the world was opening up a bit more and it became harder to carve out that time and wanting to commit to it. And so I got some notes that were wonderful, but required some more structural changes between like the best note I got from my agent was moving something that happens in weekend. Originally it happened at the end of weekend 2 when we moved it to the beginning of the 3rd weekend. And it just requires unbraiding and repuzzling and all of that sort of finicky nature of plot. And so it took a bit longer, but it was great. And so then, yeah, we sold that one by the following December. And then I've been working on this like ghostwriting book has been my 3rd book, which is not a question you asked, but I'm just continuing to
Yes, that's great. I would have asked it.
And it's like a co-writing project, and that's been really wonderful.
Is your name going to be on it, or it's just going to?
I'll be in the acknowledgements, I think, which is sort of great because it's a perfect blend of things I love to do, which is taking someone else's sort of character or helping writers with their stories. It's like what I love in my job as a development exec is reading someone's work and helping see what they might be missing or help to just strengthen or fine tune. And so this woman knew she wanted to write a novel about her life. And so I could just take the character that she gave me, which was pretty much a version of herself, and put it on a book's journey and talk about plot and stakes and taking time bombs and all of these things we talk about in work is in like sort of film and TV development. and then write the book. And it was so fun. And I love being able to use someone else's voice. I joke, I've been ghostwriting my whole life because I've written all of my sister's college essays. I've written all my husband's English assignments since the 10th grade and we went to college together. So I wrote all
Oh,
his
wow.
writing seminar classes I can write, and I write everyone's text messages. I'm like ChatGPT. Like I'm actually really nervous for the rise of AI because what people come to me for, which is like, how do I send this text? Like, how do I tell somebody that they have to RSVP for my wedding and they missed the deadline? Like carefully worded phrases are my forte, but now that's also what a lot of people are going to ChatGPT for. So I will be be put out of use by that. So I joke I've always been sort of a ghostwriter in that sense. And so it was really fun. And so that was my third book. And now I joke, I'm like touching grass. I've spent the last 4 years on my computer pretty much every day. And so I'm taking a summer to launch Serendipity, and we have so many fun events. It's been such a privilege and blessing. And then I'm just going to try and live a little bit and then figure out what I want to write about next.
Are there bookstores on Fire Island?
There's a Saltaire library. So we're doing an event there August 22nd, which is sweet, with Jane Rosen, who also writes wonderful books set
Yes,
on our island.
absolutely.
We're such a sweet, lovely, lovely mentor and author friend. So it's been fun, but I always wear blue to my event. So spending a lot of time like thinking of fun outfits, I always have treats and cookies, and I love their like birthday parties for the whole month. So it's been,
That's
it's
great.
great.
That's
Yeah.
great. I'm happy for you. It sounds
Thank
like
you.
things are going very well.
I really feel so lucky, and it's just, again, it's so funny. And what I always hope readers take from my books is, and a lesson I tell myself too, which is like trusting in not trying to drive faster than your headlights, like all of these wonderful things. And what my characters have to learn in their books too is to kind of embrace that idea of jump and the net will appear, and that like we can't plan too fast. Like it's okay to outgrow or to regrow. The key of just like finding the people who support you and then letting the rest kind of fall into place without getting to like finding an ease through that stress, which is what I tell myself every day. But sometimes some days are easier said than done. But yeah, it's been a really crazy past couple 4 years, but
Right.
so before
Aren't you exhausted though? The only day you give yourself
I
any time
know.
off is Sunday.
I know. And most of my Sundays I have to read for work. I'm pretty tired. That's why I'm gonna take a little break. It's like
Okay.
tired, but I love it. I also truly try to just be so like, I'll joke because I'll be like, oh, I have so much work to do. And it's like, boohoo, Becky, like you have to read a book for work and like write a book for yourself. What's your life so hard? Like I'm surrounded by all of my favorite things, or I have to like watch a lot of movies and TV shows for work. I'm using air quotes to know directors and screenwriters. And I genuinely have no other hobbies. Like all of my hobbies I've been so lucky to make a career in my hobbies. So I try to catch myself from complaining because it's really such a gift and it's really fun.
I'm very happy for you. Congratulations on all your success.
you.
It's wonderful.
Thanks so much.
So we're going to close this chapter.
Perfect.
And I thank Becky so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And let me know when you write another one. We'd love to have you on again.
Okay, I'll see you in
So-
Long Island. See
Oh, that would be great. Okay. Thanks so much, Becky. I'm going to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Take care.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.